One other thing that I'd like to say in part two about the 4B movement, and I think one of the reasons why the 4B movement is like it is or has developed, first of all, is because I believe a lot of it is financial. Women wanting men to do things with their money that a man is not willing to do, and they go to feeling like men are stingy and men are, I don't think the 4B movement is about men. I think it's about women. And I don't think it's about male problems or women having problems with men and men all being the same. I think it's more about women being the same and wanting the same things from men that men aren't willing to give. Now, I just watched a video by Nick Jones. Nick Jones decided to do this video all of a sudden about men in Russia and other countries versus men in the U.S. Men in the U.S. are into this new world of a woman helping him supply the home. Now, let me say something about a woman that a man doesn't realize she is. Part of the way men feel today, men feel that they can't handle women today. Men feel that women are not a possession. Now, women are a possession. They're not so much property as they are possession, but in the Bible, the most harshest, most sorrowful way to lose a woman is when a king or a warrior, some kind of powerful guy comes and he kills you, or he harms you, or he takes over your area, your region, your nation, your town, whatever. And in doing that, he takes the spoil. What is the spoil? Part of the spoil is the woman. The woman, or women, is part of a man's spoil, is part of a man's riches. It's part of his... Women are a man's most prized possession. In the history of the Bible, even Absalom, they say Absalom, I've called him Absalom, but Absalom is, I guess, the proper pronunciation of his name. Absalom, David's son. I think it's David's son from another woman. I'm not sure. I'd have to read up on it again, but I do know this. I know that Absalom felt it natural, and he was advised to do this from a guy of wisdom, Ahithophel, or whatever his name is, however that R really confuses me. It sounds more like an item instead of a name of a person. Or a medication. Today, that name would be used to describe a new medication or something. But his name was Ahithophel or something like that. He was this man of wisdom. And he told Absalom to do all these things. And Absalom... Now, I don't know if Ahithophel was in on the whole wives thing. But this is the thing. Absalom went and slept with his father's wives in public. Now, to me, these women, the way they described it was like the women were in on it. Because under the impression that Absalom would have control. And these women were obviously younger than David. and more closer to probably his son's age, Absalom's age. So Absalom, to show his father that he was taking over, he went in and slept with his wives publicly. It's weird, and to me it's really pagan, but I'm pretty sure it was less, I don't know, in a less graphic way. I'd say that Absalom went and he was touching his wives or fondling his wives or something in a public place to show, and back in them days, if you had one wife, and I look up to Sarah, because Sarah was one of those Jewish wives that didn't play with she didn't let submissiveness get out of hand, she told Abraham, and then you see stuff like, Isaac did it, and so did Abraham do it. They both did it. Where they went in to Egypt, or they went into another place because there was a famine. And they told their wives to say, "You're my sister," so that the king wouldn't kill them and take their wives. And in the Bible, the women said nothing about it. They said, she didn't say, "Hold up, Abraham. I'm not going to tell him you're my brother. I'm going to explain to him I am the wife of Abraham. And then if he decides, but wait, Abraham knew that he don't know these people, and he had no sword or no army with him. I think. Of course, Abraham did have an army back home, but he didn't bring them with him, I guess. But he didn't have nothing with him when he went down for the famine, or they would have took all his possessions and said, "Okay, we'll give you bread for all you got." But he went down for the famine or whatever. And he says, "Tell them you're my sister, not my wife." And it was the Lord in a dream or something like that told the king, "Abraham, why you say this is your sister? I almost slept with your wife." So he had respect that this is a man's wife, because all men ain't the same, Same thing with Isaac. Isaac did the same thing. I forget how that turned out. But then it shows also, there's a place in the scriptures where Isaac was caressing Rebekah, showing that he really, really enjoyed her, showing that he had a romance going on with Rebekah. Now, you ladies, Rebekah didn't pick Isaac at the bar. She didn't pick him. She didn't pick Isaac at the bar. Neither did she pick him at the club. She came in and they told her, because she was the same heritage as Isaac, and she was one of basically his sisters or his half sisters or cousins or something like that. She agreed to marry Isaac because he was of the same kindred. Okay. And she got on her. They went and took her. She never met Isaac. She went, and it says she went and they brought her to Isaac, and Isaac looked at her, and she got off her horse first and went over to Isaac. Okay, if I remember the story correctly. And she agreed from the get-go to say yes. So her family said yes because she said yes. And again, like in them days, a man went to a woman's father and said, hey, I'm interested in, or my son is interested in, or I need a wife for my son, and so forth and so on. Okay? Women were, to more pagan men, property. But to more Christian men, they were a possession. Like Sarah wasn't just property to Abraham. Sarah was his possession. In other words, this is mine not only as like, this table I'm doing this video on is mine, but let's say this table was a gift to me from my very, very best friend. Okay, that'd be more of a possession. That's the difference. Women are a possession. If I go out and meet a woman today, yes, I'm in charge. Okay, and she is basically my property, but in a more human and subtle light, she is my possession. I possess this. This is my prized possession on a entity, spiritual, physical, emotional level. She's not this table. I will sell this table. I will sell this house and be homeless to save her. I will kill thousands of men to find her. You know what I'm saying? And they show this stuff in movies every day, but it doesn't happen in real life. Most of y'all, if your wife got kidnapped, most of us would just call the police. Unless we're in the mob or something, and we know exactly what's going on. But if our wife went missing and there's nobody threatening or there's no faces coming up that I'm familiar with or whatever, most of us would just put it in the hands of the police. And if we would give the police so much time to complete this investigation, and then we would give up and say, well, she played some kind of stunt on me and ran off with another guy. I can't believe this happened. But a woman is a man's possession. And if you look at that in the light that it's supposed to be. And so when you say stuff like, when men here in America got problems with, I need to go check something. So my point in mentioning all that is that women and men in America today don't understand that if you get married, the man, if a woman gets married, she becomes a man's possession, a man's property. Now, biblically, the Bible says a man's body is not his own either. It belongs to his wife. The difference between both y'all belonging to each other is that the belonging to each other part is equal. But the possession part for the man is more dominant. Let me say that again. Y'all owning each other is equal. That's what is meant in the scripture. But the possession part of it is more masculine and more dominant on the man's side by nature, by scripture. Okay? And you may think this bothers you, but if you really wanted to actually investigate why you're 4B or why you're a MGTOW, This is why. Because that biblical principle that they practice, they used to practice in this country, but they've always practiced it. They've always practiced it in other countries before they did here in America. Other countries are more traditional than America. They've always been. America is new compared to a lot of other countries, and even in those countries today, even though they're becoming more metropolitan and more of a democracy and all this kind of stuff, they believe in traditional values. And a traditional value, this is not putting down women. It's for a lot of women in these other countries, this is a traditional value. Whereas women frown upon it here in the U.S., but in other countries, this is a very strong traditional value of both men and women, especially the women. Is that a man takes care of her as his property. Just like he takes care of his property. He's got insurance on his property. Okay, his house is paid for. House is paid for. He's not making installments on it. It's paid for. He's keeping up with the taxes. The house is not going anywhere. Now, on the flip, women here in America, they'll sit here and look and say, his taxes are due. Maybe the house needs to be repainted. Maybe the house needs to be... Maybe I want a different house. Maybe I don't want to keep this house. Maybe I want a different house. Meaning herself. She don't want. Her is the house. Wants to be a different house. She's thinking, okay, I'm all happy with the husband taking care of me, but I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that. And she thinks that she shouldn't have to, she thinks that it shouldn't bother him. No. When it's said, a woman is a man's possession, and a woman is a man's property, that didn't mean that he is her chauffeur or her handler. You know what I'm saying? Or her lawyer, her advocate, to get her whatever she wants. And a lot of women today are like, hey, go get me, because that's what you think, that either some of y'all think that's what he's doing to you and you want to make it equal, or you think that that's the way it should be since you're the property, you're the possession. Now, it's a mutual possession. It's a mutual agreeing to be someone's property. If you read about slavery in the Bible, you'll find out that biblical slavery is not the way people are trying to find a graphic picture of slavery in the Bible. Slavery in the Bible doesn't have really that much to do with the Islamic slavery. Black people want to go in the Bible and say, oh, well, the Bible condones slavery. But if you really look at slavery in the Bible, it doesn't have much to do with the Islamic slavery. That was a different cultural type of slavery. Slavery in the Bible is more about put it like this. In the Bible days, you didn't have like levels, okay, of financial stability. You didn't have levels of wages and all this kind of stuff. You get this wage for being a bricklayer. You get this wage for being a painter. You get this wage for selling cars. You get this wage for selling insurance. No. All the people selling insurance and selling cars, so to speak, and all that were all part of the same network. The people that had to go work in the fields and all that. If you were not an owner, and it wasn't good enough to just be an owner of a business, because that always came up for grabs. You had to be by kinsmen, by family line ownership, and you were more a non-slave because of your family line and how well you got along with that family line. If you became an outcast to your family line, your people would put you out there in slavery because you were an outcast. So you didn't get to own anything, and they could take away from you what you do own if you did something like sleep with your brother's wife or your father's wife, or you did damage to a child or whatever. If you're in the family, and instead of, stabbing you or stoning you or something, they made you become a slave, that was considered mercy on you as a member of the family. So slaves always had some kind of reason why they were like, yeah, I'll be a slave. And people see this in the Bible and they're like, what? You're looking at it all wrong. Slavery in the Bible is more like employment today. Okay, it's more like, you get off the street, you're homeless. You're willing to do whatever. I was homeless one time, and this guy gave me his house. Nothing in that house was mine. I had like one little box of stuff that was mine. And I kept the smaller box. Well, there was another box inside. I kept the smaller box upstairs in the room that he allowed me to sleep in. He told me I could sleep in either room. I did not want to sleep on his bed that he shares with his wife. He had two homes, because the other home he was taking care of his mother or whatever, and he never seen this home. He had one home in the ghetto, and he had another home up in the better part of the town. And he was so polite, he would even call me to let me know he was coming around. He didn't just walk in the door. He treated it like it was my house. But everything in there was his. The food, the water, the gas, the light, and everything. Everything was his. He paid all the utilities. Okay? The house was paid off, I think. But, your utilities like your water and your gas and your light, he paid that out of his pocket while he was not present in the house. And me as a security officer, he also wanted me there because he was never there. He says, well, since you're homeless, you can maintain my house, and we're going to be up here for a while. And so it wasn't my job to stay there forever. Just like in the Bible, it wasn't anybody's job to be a slave forever, okay? But I was a slave. I was living in somebody's house. And I had to do extra things. Like if he called me on the phone and he said, go over to the church and go do this and go do that. You know what I'm saying? Let somebody in, let them in. I got so-and-so coming down the house and drop something off. Please let them in, blah, 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 blah. I got this other homeless guy, I told him he could shower, at my house for one day. He could tell me what to do that you wouldn't be able to tell me to do if I'm paying my own rent, okay? So he wasn't charging me rent. Me not paying rent for that house, people, made me a slave. Now, I could have paid rent because I was working. But man, he was so good to me. He even let me use his van. I didn't have my car. My car is trying to catch up to rent at the old house. I let my car. It needed to be inspected and everything. I eventually got that done, and I got a different car. But I was a slave. And so when people look at slavery in the Bible, when they look at the culture of the Bible, They make too much of a big deal out of certain things that people chose to be slaves. Because if you were a slave, you were bought and paid for. And it was better to be bought and paid for than to be out there, sword fighting with somebody across the river, or, somebody coming and trying to lie to you and tell you that you can't drink water out of this well, or whatever, will cut your head off, or whether you were a man or a woman, if you were a woman and you were a slave to somebody's family, you were bought and paid for and protected from outsiders. And then today, and when we do employment, okay, our money, and based upon, our money status and based upon where we live, protect us. You're getting on a bus going to, let's say, Carnegie, you might be better off than you're getting on a bus that's taking you to Braddock. You know what I'm saying? You're getting on you're on the bus and you're going to Fox Chapel. Okay? You're probably safer than getting on a bus and going to, let's say, Hazelwood, or you know what I'm saying? Just like when I was before I moved here to Pittsburgh, I used to ride a bus. I used to get off one bus in this town called Cheswick, which is very racist. A lot of white racists there, but a lot of nice white people too. And I used to ride that bus. That bus would go through the ghetto and out the other end. Okay? But you were always safe because of who's getting on that bus. These are the higher paid security, white collar kind of people that are getting on this bus. All these women in their cute little dresses going to work these executive jobs and all like that. And these women treated me good. I mean, they, the men would look at me like, the women treated me like, oh, he seems like a nice guy, And they would talk to me at the bus stop and stuff like that, and we would get a nice little conversation and stuff like that. Shows you how men and women are different. But the men always felt that, oh, he's not as wealthy as us, so there must be something wrong with him. Well, you don't know how wealthy I am. I'm actually a security guard. I was a security guard back then, too. I actually watch over people like you, okay? Even though I don't make as much money as you, I watch over people like you. You know what I'm saying? So, and I still do that today. I watch over the higher class people that are higher class than me, which is slavery. When you are all this and that for someone higher that makes more money than you, and that's slavery. Okay? In the Bible. It's slavery. Now, to you, slavery was something. No, we never left slavery. Slavery is going on right now. Okay, that's enough slavery. In closing, I'm just showing you the difference between possession, slavery, and property. Is what I'm doing. Okay? When a man purchases a woman. Now, there's two types of purchase. Like I said in another video, I had a friend that went to Africa and bought his wife. He took his earnings that he had in his checking account. Some of y'all women going, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It was only a couple thousand. You think you worth a couple thousand? You think a couple thousand is going to make you be with somebody for 50 years? No, it wasn't about buying her according to what she was worth. It was about the custom in foreign countries for a man, especially a man coming from a world power like America, to buy a woman from the foreign land as a wife, but buying her he was not buying her, he was buying her parents. He was giving her parents. It's the parents. You know, and in the Philippines today, all these passport bros and all like that are going over to the Philippines, and they are actually helping the family out with financial stuff before they marry. Before he marries their Asian daughter, he's helping the family with financial burdens and stuff like that. He's bringing them over to the U.S. and letting them visit the U.S. on a visa. He's riding them around the Philippines, the places in the Philippines in their own country that they never been to before. He's learning the language. He's learning the food. He's learning how to do all these things. You know, he does a lot for that Asian girl before he actually puts a ring on her finger. And her family. To show his love and desire that he wants to have this woman as a possession. And that's a lot to think about. And we don't do that here in America. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we suffer. Because in those countries, they've been doing this since Jesus. They've been doing this since Moses. They was doing this before Spain colonized the Philippines. They were traditional like that. And now today, after Spain has colonized the Philippines years and years later, they're still traditional. And America is losing its tradition. And this is why women are like they are. But you know what causes a country to lose its tradition? It's sin. Paganism causes a country to lose its tradition. Okay? It really does. Paganism causes a country to lose its tradition. Ladies, you have to understand, getting married by tradition and by religion worldwide, not only Christianity, but Islam, ancient first world Catholicism, okay, all the religions, all the pagan religions, all of them had traditions. All had that one tradition where a man buys the woman, gives something, or does something. Now, in some more barbaric pagan tribes inside countries, men actually died. They lost a finger, maybe lost their nuts to be with a woman. Imagine that. Of course, then again, I think some of these fights, these barbaric fights, had rules to them, and most of them, you do anything. You can blind a man, but keep his nuts. He has to consummate his marriage. So let him keep his nuts. But men had to fight for these women. Oh, you want this woman who is so beautiful in that she is basically spoken for by this man. By you wanting this woman, you are going up against this power source over here. This king, or this it wasn't a king. It was like these were in tribes. Even in Native American tribes back in the day, it was like that. Men actually fought over women. There was a battle. Okay, if you win the fight, and if the man was already in love with the woman, and the only way to have her was to fight for her, or she would be left to be with someone she doesn't really want to be with, and he's afraid that he'll abuse her and her children, that he's going to impregnate her with, and all like that. He fought. he had to get out there and fight. And if he didn't win, and she wasn't allowed to show exactly like, oh, please, this is the one I really want. She wasn't allowed to do that. She had to act like whoever wins is the better man. Period. That's it. Whoever wins the fight, even if he's a total a-hole, whoever wins the fight is the better man. That's it. And so they fought. And they got the woman. And usually it was more than just the woman. It was other things too. There was other things to lose too. But woman as a property, if the man won the fight, he got not only your house and your part of the village, but he got your wife too. He got your woman. The woman that your wife became his wife, or the woman that you was trying to marry, he married her instead, however that went. But all through the ages, going all the way back to the beginning of time, after Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, in most civilizations, women were always the possession of, if it was war, there was more to it. But but one of the favorite things for men to do, the women had no say-so. And this is the beautiful thing about America, because in other countries back in the day, women had no say-so. They were just, women would be having locker room talk, so to speak. They didn't have locker rooms back then. But let's say all these women that are like just spoiled. They go with the property. They're sitting in the locker room talking, and they're probably saying stuff like, well, if we get captured, I hope the big dark-skinned guy, he looks like he got a big, I hope he captures us, or I hope that whoever wins, they don't pick me because I don't like either one of them. I hope I get the little short guy because he seems like a really nice guy. He seems like he would love me really good, You know what I'm saying? I hope the main guy don't pick me. I hope I marry one of his servants. I know he's richer, but I want to be with one of his servants because he's a mean bastard, And some women were like, they just, and you had to grab them by the arm and drag them into captivity because they won, And so, women have never been the say-so. Now here in America is late amongst all these nations and their cultures. America is late. America has stolen off these other cultures. But the good news for you and us that we ruined it, is that we come into America, when we first came into America, not only were the black slaves, at that time slavery came into America, but their wives were slaves too. The only difference between the white being a slave and the blacks being a slave is that the woman had jobs. She was better than the slave. She was allowed to discipline the slaves. She was allowed to say whatever, she was allowed to do whatever her husband told her to do. She had his ring on her finger. She had things on her body to let what her family name was or whatever, her clothing. And she would go and she would tell the slaves what to do. A lot of times she was more merciful to the slaves. And the men knew that, and they did that on purpose. They sent the woman out there to do certain things for the slaves because they knew she would come from a more feminine, merciful side as dealing with the slaves. Not all of there's documented stories about some of the female slave masters under the direction of their husband that just her husband had to stop letting her be a slave master because she was just looking for reasons, and then there are women, it's documented, that were sexually assaulting the men. were the men, because they were separated from their families anyway. Now, and that's another thing you don't understand about the Atlantic slavery, is just like we evolve in this life, they evolved in that life too. Like, you read one part, that was only a certain time in history. That's not the whole Atlantic slavery time that they were slaves. But when they first became slaves, it was like that. Now, a lot of these women would, because they were married to men that, whether they were actually sleeping with the black women in slavery or not, they were doing different things, saying things, and and it upset their wives, whether they was just talking or they actually did it. Some actually did it, and some just talked about doing it, and they got caught talking about what they want to do with these chocolate little bunnies that they got in change, and so the women would go down, and the women who were their husbands were so busy with slave making, that they were so busy with the slave trade, these men had no time for their wives. Their wives knew that they wanted their number one. So what did they do? They would go down and they would do things like trade sex for privileges and stuff like that. And women actually did it, and both white women and white men did things with the slaves that were sexually fulfilling for a moment, or just sexually experimental. But see, that's the lack of power of sex, though, because you were still a racist. Okay, you were still willing to kill your slaves if they talk back to you or whatever, even after what you did sexually with them in the barn or whatever, or what you had been doing sexually with them for weeks and months. You were willing to kill your slave, sell your slave to somebody else, and let him or her do whatever he or she wants to do with your slave. You get mad at your slave. It didn't matter how wonderful of an intimate secret intimate relationship you were having. If you got mad at your slave, that's what you did. Now, what is this to say? This is explaining to you where we've come up in this culture. Okay? Women have always been property, and we started America with women being property. Women, even though they helped their men practice the slave trade, they themselves were a higher breed because they were a man's possession, not just his property, but his possession as well. They were also slaves. And so when slavery ended, I believe a lot of women got more respect from their husbands and had more sex with their husbands as well. That's what I believe. Okay? Now, over the years, we've become more romantic. I think as we come into an era where women have more say-so in relationships, there's nothing that pleases a man more than when his woman chooses. Now, in closing, after all I said, this is the punchline. There's nothing more joyful to a man than when a woman chooses to be his property. chooses to be, better yet, his possession. A possession that is going to be his back. That's going to have his back. And a possession that's going to help him build this empire. But the thing about a woman helping you build anything, ladies, the man is still in charge. That's the way it is. The man is always the head of his home. And there has to be a head. Just like when your kids were, when your kids were getting older, and you usually pick the oldest one to be the babysitter. But if you had two kids that were around the same age, you had to give them each their own responsibilities as being in charge, or you had to just let them be in charge by age. But a lot of times, the 13-year-old might be more mature than the 14-year-old. So what are you going to do with the 14-year-old? You're going to say to the 13-year-old, this is your responsibility. You're both in charge. 13-year-old's going to do this, 14-year-old's going to do that. Because the 13-year-old is more mature than the 14-year-old. So you're going to give your 13-year-old responsibilities. You're going to put them both in charge. Okay? But the 14-year-old is, by birthright, is in charge, even though he or she is not as mature as the 13-year-old. Okay? The 14-year-old is in charge. So, in the same way, in a relationship, in marriage, even though the man may be not a perfect man, not a rich man, not a man that's really good on, he's not really a good steward of his finances or good at running his house. He may be an angry man. He may be, but he's still in charge. And sometimes with marriage counseling, marriage counselors will show you where, like if I was married, if I got married right now, I would be in charge of my finances, but I'd never see them. Until I think my wife is lying to me or something like that. I would let her run my finances. Now, I let my last wife run my finances, and where'd they go? They just disappeared, okay? And when I would say, what's going on with the finances, she would say, well, I need this, I need that, I need this, I need that. I said, woman, we got 4 kids. Nowhere in there did I hear a W-E. We need this. It's about you. I'm the one working, and you're making this about you? Okay? You promised to go back to work, and you never did. Now you want to make this about you. Which I didn't want her to go to work. I wanted her to stay home. Because I think that's where she belongs. And when I say that, I don't mean that she needs to be my little doggy or my little cat that runs around my house. No. I just don't want her out there in them streets. I don't want her out there worrying about, she's already tired enough just yelling at my stepson. Okay? I don't want her coming home and then all I got to deal with all day long. I want her to have energy, which she didn't, because she felt that if she has to do anything, she has to clean, she got to cook, or whatever, she got to the point where she don't want to do none of it. And it became a problem for us. And not only did it abuse me, it abused the kids as well, because, and I had to tell her one day, I said, why is my stepdaughter always cooking? I'm not going to sleep with my stepdaughter. I didn't marry my stepdaughter. She doesn't understand that a woman cooking is not about just putting her in the kitchen and giving her a job. A woman cooks is part of her feminine display. Is part of her expression as the feminine model. It has nothing to do with slavery and putting her in the kitchen. She's in the kitchen because 9 out of 10, she doesn't want me in the kitchen. Because I'm never going to cook. Even if I'm a good cook, I'm never going to cook and keep it clean at the same time like her. You're going to find some eggshells in places where you didn't know eggshells could end up. Okay? Not that I put them there on purpose. I'm just that messy. Okay? How did eggshells get way behind there? What was you doing? Throwing them behind there? Like, what's going on? You know, men, you know, and I know, like, I remember, you know, when I was married, my ex used to have me pull out the refrigerator from the wall. You said you was going to help me clean the house. You didn't clean this. I needed somebody with muscle to pull this out of the wall. And I'm like, how in the heck did all that stuff get behind the back of the refrigerator? It took me months to realize that, putting stuff on top of the refrigerator and forgetting about it. This is what it looked like not only when it gets old, but when it falls and gets old and, you know, it falls behind there like that, you know. Guy was showing me where he had to fix something on his refrigerator. I says, first you need to clean it. All that stuff, all that puffy black stuff on the back, you got to unscrew that thing, unplug it first, then take that thing off. Got to clean all that dirt that you allowed to be on there. Your wife know. I was teasing him. I said, does your wife know that you allowed all that stuff to grow on the back of your refrigerator? If your wife saw that, she'll probably never eat again. Your wife sees that, she'll probably never eat again from that refrigerator. She'll probably ask you to get rid of the whole entire refrigerator. You know, but the point is, women are made and designed to be cleaner and neater. God pity the woman that is, you know, I got one kid in my family that's like that. Of course, we taught her better. She's better now that she's older, that she's a mom. Now she's a neat freak now that she's a full-time mom. But when she was, you know, our daughter in the middle, you know, she was a mess. She was the dirtiest out of all 4 kids, you know, and she, you know, but her mom did teach her how to cook and clean and stuff like that. But she had to be taught. And she never grew out of it until she actually became a mother, and her kids put her through what she put us through. Okay? But in closing, women, if you don't want to be property and possession, yes, you need to shave your head. You need to stop dating men, because I don't care if a man is really a man, okay, he's just going to jump into his role and he's going to be a problem for you. He's going to immediately just be like, what you need. Okay? No, we don't do that. But we do that. Why are you wearing that? Why are you over there? Who is he? Who is she? Your dad don't come in here and tell me what to do. Okay? Your dad, no. You're not, are you married to your dad? No, you're married to me. Your dad ain't sleeping with you. So, and that's another thing, ladies. You need to understand that penis wants just as much respect as that coochie you got wants respect. And that penis feels that he deserves certain things. Just like your coochie feels like you deserve certain things. So, on a sexual basis, let's all respect each other and understand that you being property and possession has always worked in every culture. And in the event of war, you're going to wish that you had been more property in possession of your spouse. But also in the event of war, this is where men feel this small, because if we're outgunned and we're outnumbered, the first thing that we're going to lose, that we hate to lose, is our wives and our children. For them to get wounded in war, or them to be taken captive, or some other country to come in here and, prostitute, my wife, or another country to come in here and, I'm dead, or I'm locked up in a prison somewhere, and my wife is putting on her little short dresses and everything and working her way up the collar to be married to some big, some big world power man, okay, with all the money, a billionaire. And she may be richer than she's ever been because somebody came in and took everything that was mine. And so that whole war, property and possession situation here, ladies, is something you need to really, really, really think about, because it's the way it's always been, and it's the only way it works. Okay? So God bless you, and thank you for watching, and that's part 2 of that. Okay.